In his session, The Change Management Playbook, Ayodeji equips new practitioners with practical tools by aligning everyday processes with proven change management essentials. We have our dear Masha South. She brings over 15 years of experience as a certified change professional with a proven track record of guiding organizations through transformational initiatives. She specializes in employee-centric change strategies, reshaping centers of excellence, and identifying operational gaps that drive continuous improvement. Known for her result-oriented approach, Masha consistently delivers measurable impact while helping stakeholders navigate complex change. She champions the philosophy that change is natural and essential for organizational growth, empowering teams to embrace transformation and opportunity. So let's welcome our speakers today.
Thank you, Amaka. Right, and thank you, Amaka, and welcome Ayodiji, my colleague, right, that is gonna, talk about some of the tools that Amaka introduced earlier. So let's start by looking at what today's journey is going to look like, right? So I want to say good morning, good afternoon. If where you're joining from, feel free to just drop that in the chat, right? What we want to look at today is first, we want to do an overview of understanding of some of the change management fundamentals. We are going to talk a little bit about that. Essential models and frameworks that we use. We're going to touch on some because there are many out there, but we're going to talk about some of the popular ones. Also, practical tools for new practitioners, and there's a section for Q&A, right? So by the end of this hour, you'll have a practical tool that you can apply. We want you to, so IDG is going to walk you through about 2 tools that we use on a day-to-day basis, and we want you to be able to reflect on that tool and talk about, and to be able to use it within the workplace. Please, as Amaka said, use the chat, the Q&A meeting tools. So to the right of your screen, you see those 9 dots. There is the Q&A. You can drop your questions there, or you can drop it in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, right? There is a section for us to respond to questions. We want to keep this session engaged, so we'll try to respond throughout and also in our Q&A section. Now, to jump right in, what I would love for you guys to do is to drop in the chat your current role, right? I want to know, I want to know, what type of people are looking to transition into change management, so we can context that throughout the next hour. Now, while you're doing that, and I'll look at it at once I'm done with the slide, I want to talk about the change practitioner's mindset. And I know we're targeting persons who are trying to transition, you want to learn about change management. And I want you to use this moment to say, okay, if this is the change manager's mindset, all right, do I have that mindset? What is it that I need to do to be able to start thinking like that, right? And just to share with you what is change management. So change management within organization overall is a structured approach to transition an individual or teams from the current state. So they might be implementing you might work a certain way today, and we might want to change something tomorrow. So it's all about transitioning you from working one way today to working a different way tomorrow. You'll hear this all the time. It's all about the people side of change, helping individuals successfully adopting new processes, technology, and behavior. But I want to throw in a caveat, even though it says it's all about people. You have to keep in mind that it's a combination of understanding how systems work today within organization, how processes work today within organization, and ensuring that you're bringing in that human psychology part of it, right? With that people in. So processes are changing, systems are changing. How does that affect people? It's not about, oh, it's the people side. Yes, it is. In its truest term, maybe that it is. But if you're going to become a practitioner, you have to be in that frame of mind that you need to understand how stuff works today within organization. So let's look at the principle of differentiating good change managers from great ones. So here are some change management mindset that I want you to think about leaving here. We have empathy first, right? So thinking about people, the the human psychology, understanding the human impact, making connection with that human element within the organization. We have a data driven mindset. What that means is that you're going to use metrics to guide decision, using data to tell a story, right? So you have to get in the frame of mind. A lot of times you'll hear about surveys, you'll hear about pulling reports or analytics from systems within. So as a new practitioner or you're transitioning, what is it that you're doing today that allows you to be very data driven, right? Because being data driven is the mindset of a change practitioner. Being collaborative, right? So change happens through people and not to people, right? So you need to get in that frame of mind that you're gonna have lots of conversation. You'll be talking, just like how I'm here today talking about the change management mindset. This is what you'll be doing, talking to teams and deciding what to be done, what activities should happen, not doing it all on your own, right? Never do anything on your own. Have that collaborative mindset, being adaptive. So, and this is a critical mindset for change practitioner. You have to be flexible, right? It is the key to success. Things change weekly, monthly, daily. Being able to pivot as new decisions are made, new information is discovered. If it's one thing COVID taught us about humans is that I think we're adaptable. Some people, yes, go through, but a lot of us pivots in 2020. We adapted accordingly, right? And we are here today and we stand strong. So we are resilient. So at least one thing we know, we're adaptable in when we need to, but this is something that you need to get used to because on change projects, dealing with individuals and teams and organization and how decisions are made, you have to be flexible around that. Continuous learning. So every change teaches you something new, right? We might use the same frameworks, we might use the same tools, but the teams are typically different, how decisions are made within a country, or not even country organization, can be different. So continuous learning is an important mindset to have. You have to read a lot. You have to read about the industry, what's happening out there. Now, I did ask, it, and I just wanted to get an idea of for you to tell me what roles you're in. So I see resource planner to drop it in the chat. So while I talk about the other slides, just drop in the chat what role are you currently in, right? So drop that in the chat so I can know and have an idea. Now, another question I want to ask. Looking at this, the mindsets that are here, and which ones are you confident you possess based on your current role? So drop that in the chat as well. I'd love to see. So we have around five here. And, empathy first, data driven, being collaborative, being adaptive, continuous learning. Which one you say, you know what, I've got this, right? But I need to improve on the others. So I see is Jamil, I do not want to butcher your name. So if I'm not calling it correctly, just come off mute and let me just correct me. Agility lead. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool role, right? So Jamil, you could, is it Jamil? Yes, no, Jamil? Yeah. Which one of these mindsets I'm picking on you? You'd say, you know what, I've got this. And if I need to transition, at least I know I have one and I am going to improve on the others. Anybody brave enough to tell me? Continuous improvement. Awesome. So it's all about learning new things. That's good. And I think this is what everyone should adopt. All right. Project lead, data driven. Nice. Danielle, that's good. All right. So let's talk about modules and framework that is used within organization change management. So what you've seen here, we have three models and framework that I'm going to highlight today. But these are not the only modules that are out there. These are some of the most popular ones. And the reason we are showing these three modules today is because it's important if you're transitioning from one career to the next, it is important to learn the different frameworks and what they mean and how they are used. So as I said, there are several out there. These are very popular ones that you hear about and I want to bring your attention to. So if you should leave here today and say, okay, I'm going to learn something new, you can pick these three and start to read more about them. So let's talk about Kotter's 8-step process, which is, it's a very popular one, right? So when we're navigating change within an organization, what, and I'm just going to touch on them briefly. We, what Kotter is saying is that there's 8 steps that we need to consider when navigating change within an organization. And it highlights creating urgency, forming a guided coalition within the organization, developing the vision and strategy, communicating the vision, which is important, and empowering broad-based action, which is executing on the change management plans, generating short-term win within organization, and also talk about sustained acceleration, which is more, you'll hear the term of reinforcement, sustainment within of change, and instituting the change, which is also a part of sustaining the change once it has been implemented within organization. So this particular model and framework, what when it is used, it's for large scale organization transformation, cultural kind of change, right? It's typically used with these projects. Now, when I talk about a large scale organization transformation project, I'm thinking about an ERP implementation. So if you're working on an SAP project or you're working on an Oracle. Now, as you know, an employee, you probably, some people have worked on project where the employee don't know what SAP is, right? But they are using SAP. They only know the name of like the module. So for instance, you might use success factor, right? For your HR activities within an organization. But you don't really know that success factor is an SAP product. You might use Oracle, but in your organization, you call it like you might report your expenses, but you really don't call it Oracle. You just call it, expense reporting. But what I'm trying to draw at is that the this Kotter, when you think about ERP upgrade, ERP implementation, this is the framework most people would look towards, right? ADKAR. So this is a popular one. So every time we think about ProSci, ADKAR model is a part of ProSci, right? So this is popular. A lot of people hear about it. I don't know how widely it's used, but it's definitely a very popular framework. And as you can see, there's five key elements that it considered around awareness, desire, knowledge, and ability reinforcement. And this particular model is focused on individual change, right? And not necessarily organizational change. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, right? So when it is used, trying to understand individual resistance, creating targeted intervention for a particular individual, right? So it's highly recommended when you're dealing with small stakeholder groups that are impacted, right? But if you're doing like a large group and you have over 100,000 people impacted, it's going to be difficult or challenging to kind of get an individual lens in terms of how the change is impacting them. Another popular one, which is the bridge transition model. So the bridge transition model talks about um, the emotional journey of the individual that is experiencing the change. So there are three elements here that we're thinking about with the bridge model. You have the ending of the change, the neutral zone, and the new beginning. So what people must let go of, right? So those old processes, the neutral zone, right? It's in between the time of confusion and uncertainty. So what are we going to do? The decisions that need to be made, and the new beginning is when everything is solid, right? And we're starting a new way of doing something. So this particular model kind of appeal to the emotional journey of an individual. Now, there are three models here. They are very important to understand because, as you can see, one is from an organizational standpoint, one is from an individual standpoint, and one is from an emotional standpoint. Now, if you're employed within an organization, right, a large organization, what I've seen from experience is a combination. So you have customized framework ensuring that all of these three different models are integrated, right? So they have their own customized framework within organization, and you will need to understand them. So it's always good to read up about where these models come from, what is involved, so you can identify these pieces when you're employed within organization and understand them a, a bit better. And just to give you a quick summary, right? And I think I've mentioned. So you have these three models. You have Kotter, ADKAR, Bridge. So with Kotter, it focused on the organizational perspective. It's best used for large transformations. So I would say ERP, asset management kind of projects or solution. The key strength is that it's a structured process, right? The ADKAR model is from an individual perspective, personal change. Um, Even though it says personal change, it's used within small teams to understand how the change is affecting, the teams, the individuals within teams. It offers a good diagnostic tool that you can use to understand where persons are on that scale, whether they need to be more aware, if they have no desire, and stuff like that. And the bridge appeals to the emotional side of an individual, right? So it's best used for transition. So the communication and engagement piece, right, with the different teams, it appeals to the human psychology. That's its strength. Now, after looking at those tools, and it's, as I said, there are many frameworks out there, but if you're if you're new to change management, these are some popular ones, and I encourage you to try to know at least two, right? And to be able to explain those two fully. My colleague Ayo will now come and talk about some practical tools. So as a new practitioner, what you need to consider, right? So I am going to turn it over to Ayo to speak about those some tools. Ayo?
Yeah, thank you so very much, Marsha. Thank you for a very good introduction to the whole concept today. My name is Deji, or Ayo for sure. So, and I understand that a lot of us come from very different backgrounds. I can see from the chart that there's a resource scheduler here, and I'm going to come back to the resource scheduler later on because I want to understand a little bit what the resource scheduler does and draw a link to it from it to change management. So if you're able to, if you could just drop a one-liner or a two sentence into the chat about what you do in your role as a resource scheduler, as an agility lead, as a project lead, I would really appreciate that. So I'll come back to that later. But while I am going on, you can just quickly put that in the chat, right? And so, and I can see again that we're coming from different backgrounds. And so, and we're looking to pivot into change management. And that is really good because change management is one of those fields where no matter where you're coming from, your past experience, your past, your previous academic background is always going to be an asset. And so you don't need to start thinking, oh, I have never done change management before. The truth is, we all have some change management experience. We only need to frame it in the right way and understand exactly what it is about. So today, I'm going to be walking you through some of the tools. At least I'm going to concentrate on two tools. There are a lot, so many tools, but we cannot look at all of the tools. But I'm just going to pick out two. And these two that we're picking out are really important. They're foundational to whatever we do as change managers, whether professional change managers or budding change managers or just people who are looking to pivot into change management. So you can see that there are different, and we see them all. We have the change risk assessment. We have the readiness assessment. If you look at all of those things, you will see that there are so many of them that end with assessment. And that is really important. Change doesn't just happen, like Marsha said previously, change doesn't happen. Ideally, it doesn't happen to people, it happens through people. Change can happen to people, right? But we don't want change happening to people because when change happens to people, most times the outcome is not as intended. So the thing about change management is we want to have a box, a framework where we practice, through that guides everything we do. And so when we have this box, when we have this framework that guides everything, it helps us make sure that change is not just happening to people, it's actually happening through people. Like when I was studying one of these programs some time before today, and I think some couple of years ago, we're talking about communications, development communications, and I'm using this example to drive home the point that change doesn't happen, shouldn't happen to, but should happen through. And the thing is, you don't develop for people, you actually develop with people, or you develop. So we don't try to impose what we want on people. We want to assess, we want to understand, we want to see what is happening, where are they coming from. And so all of this leads to us building the different kind of tools that we make use of in our change management practice. So I am going to dive straight into these two different tools that I'll be looking at, the impact assessment and the stakeholder analysis. But I will first of all talk a little about why these tools are important. These tools are important because They are the tools that help you to understand what you need to do with the change that is happening. Like I said again, we are looking at people who want to pivot into change management. So you want to start change management, you really need to understand why changes happen, why they succeed, how they happen, to whom they happen, and how should you guide the entire process. So most changes they fail, not because you don't have the good strategy, not because the project plan is flawed, but because the people side of change wasn't managed well. And that is really fundamental to us understanding what we do as change managers. You are managing a process that is designed to lead people from one part of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. So that is that management. What are you managing? You are not really managing change, but you are managing people. So that means change managers can actually be seen as people managers, guiding people through the change from beginning to the end. So, and then there is the change triangle that we also need to understand. There are three parts to the change. You need to think of change as a triangle with three sides. The first part will be strategy, the second part will be the process, and the third part will be the people. And out of all of these three flanks to change management, all of them are important. The strategy is really important. The process is also important. People is also important. But you need to really concentrate on the people. You can get your strategy right. You can get your the process right. The strategy is what we want to achieve. The process is how you're going to get there. And then the people is who determine. They are the ones who actually determine if the change sticks. You can do everything right from A to Z, but if you omit the people side of change, it's definite nearly all of the time that the change is going to backfire or fail. So we don't want that to happen as change managers, and that is why we are also having this webinar, this seminar, to make us understand and some of these tools that will help prevent this from happening. So I'm going to go into the change impact assessment, right? So this is really crucial as well. The impact assessment helps you to answer one key question in change management. And what is that question? Who is affected by this change? And how are these people affected by this change? Look at the word itself: change, impact, assessment. All those three together. From change, what is changing? You define the change, what is happening? What kind of change is this? There are different kinds of change. It could be a system change, it could be a policy change, it could be a structure change. And we've been involved in all kinds of change transformation efforts. Some have to do with the system. Some can even be cultural change. And you know, the thing about cultural change is they are actually very hard to define. For example, you have an organization that and the staff maybe have the habit of coming late to work, or maybe not even the habit of coming late to work. Maybe they're more attuned to writing stuff down on paper and passing it through one level of authority for authorization to another. So there is that culture, that manual culture, or that paper culture. You want to change that culture. It's really very hard to change an organization's culture. So that's one of the hardest transformation efforts that you can lead as a change manager. And you don't want to have that in your first assignment as a change management specialist. You want to deal with maybe system, you want to deal with maybe policy or structure. Culture is really hard not to crack for even for some professional change managers. So there are different kinds of changes. So the first thing in doing that is you want to define this change. What kind of change is this? What is changing exactly? And when we get to the example section, you're going to see it clearly. So this is mostly going to look like theory, but what is changing is the key. Understand that you want to start with what is changing. Once you are able to define the change, then you can go to the next thing, which has to do with the impact. Change impact, right? Impact. Who is affected by this change? For example, I can just use a small anecdote here. All of us who are at this program today, you made some plans to come to this program, right? And this is not something that happens every Saturday or every day. So that means that this in itself, appearing at this event and coming here, devoting 1 hour of your time to it, is a change, is a deviation from how you would always typically spend your Saturdays. So you are making a change. You made a plan, or you set aside a 1 hour time frame. If you had activities, you moved some of the activities. So that is a personal change. Now imagine you were doing this for a group of 10 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. So how are they impacted? They are impacted in different ways, right? So you want to identify which roles or departments will experience the changes. If I was going to introduce maybe a software that will help the, say, the HR department automate payroll processes. So if I wanted to introduce a software that will help the HR department of an organization automate payroll processes, if I asked us right now that who are the impacted groups, or who will be the impacted groups in that organization, I know the first thing that will come to our mind is, oh, payroll is HR. So HR is going to be the impacted group. And that is fine. That is beautiful. That is accurate. But that is not complete, because the payroll process will not only affect the HR staff, it's also going to affect every staff of the organization who may be used to get a check, but now is going to be getting a transfer into their account. So everybody is going to be affected in one way or the other. So you want to break out these groups, you want to break out these different roles and say, oh, this person is going to be affected a lot. This other group is not going to be affected so much. This group is going to be affected in a medium manner. So you create, eventually you get to create a matrix that helps you identify who these impacted groups are. So you define the change clearly, step one. You identify the impacted groups. There could be HR, there could be finance, there could be IT, there could be external groups, there could be different kinds of people. Then the third one is you analyze. You analyze the impact. Is it low impact change? Is it medium impact change? Is it a high impact change? And so just as importantly, what kind of impact is it? Is it a process change? Is it a technology change, a technology shift? Does it require new skills or new behavior? So three things are involved in this change impact assessment. The first thing is what? You define the change. The second is you identify the groups that are impacted by this change. And then thirdly, you analyze that impact. And that is where the assessment comes from. You analyze the impact. How high is this impact? Is it low? Is it medium? Is it high? And then you develop strategies for each of these impact categorizations. So I'm going to just give you a quick example now to make it real quick and to make it real to us. Say there is a change going to happen in a hospital. I'm using a hospital right now because right now I'm in healthcare transformation. We've been involved in different kinds of transformation exercises, but the hospital is the most current one that I am involved in right now. So you want to introduce maybe a digital charting system in a hospital. By digital charting system, we mean from patient admission to patient release, from when the patient comes in and presents themselves to the clerk, even at the front desk, who takes their information, a date of birth, and so on, who then passes them on to the nurse, who takes some of their vitals, say their blood pressure, their weight, the medications they are on, from that nurse, who passes them on to maybe the physician, who does some more intensive examinations, from the nurse and from the doctor, who passes them on again to maybe to the pharmacist, and so on, from the beginning, from when the patient presents themselves to when the patient is eventually released, released to go. So from that time frame, from the beginning to the end, you're introducing something to automate that process. Before it used to be manual, and so you're coming in with a medical record system or something like that that will take all of those things, make it automated. And so that is a change. That's an example of a change. Remember, Marsha mentioned something about an ERP change at the beginning, and mentioned again that the John Kotter model is very good, very effective for large-scale transformation. So we need to be connecting all of these things together. It won't come in. It won't happen in a minute. It happens with practice and with time. Once you are presented with a kind of change that you're about to lead, automatically, based on your experience and what you've learned over time, you're already beginning to think which kind of change management model will be best for this kind of change. So this example that I just painted might be suited, or more, the John Kotter model might be even a little bit more suitable for it. So you have this this kind of change that you want to implement. And so you've already categorized the different people who are going to be affected. And in this case, we have nurses, we have finance, and we have the HR department. So the you look at the nurses as going to be having medium to high impact change. And so for the finance team is low impact. They're not really dealing with patients that much. Maybe they're only dealing with the payment parts of the whole thing. So they're not dealing so much with patients. The HR department are also not very much affected, but nurses definitely high impact. Physicians, high impact. So you know that you've done your change impact assessment once you are able to identify some of these groupings, the stakeholders, and you've broken them down into the different levels of impact that they would experience. And so that's that about the change impact assessment. It can go a little bit into more details, but for our purposes, I'm just going to keep it brief so that when we have questions, we can be able to shed a little bit more light on it. So when you capture all of those things in an impact assessment matrix, you can then visualize where disruption is likely going to happen. In this case, since nurses are the most impacted, since nurses are going to be having a lot of influence, if nurses reject this change, will it succeed? The answer is no. If the finance team accepts this change, embraces the change, will it succeed? Maybe. But definitely, if nurses and physicians do not accept this change, it's going to be a failure. And now that you've identified the impacted groups, now we can go on to the second part of it, which is the stakeholder analysis. So now let us shift gears to the second tool, which is the stakeholder analysis. You've identified some of the stakeholder groupings when you did the change impact assessment. Now you're going to be doing the stakeholder analysis and mapping. And so what this does is, if change impact tells us who is affected, it tells us how they're affected. Then stakeholder mapping does what? It will tell you how to engage them. The two of them work together, right? You've done your change impact assessment, you've identified the stakeholders, and now you are developing the stakeholder mapping to tell yourself or to tell the team how these people should be engaged based on their influence and their interest in the change. Those two are important, their influence and their interest. The first part is the high influence, high interest. And we talked about this when we mentioned the nurses and the physicians. For the hospital system, the nurses and the physicians have high interest, high influence, low interest. You're talking about influence, you're talking about interest. Look for the people who have the high influence, who have the high interest. So the first is high influence, high interest. And then the second is the high influence and the low interest. This group of people, they have a high influence on the change, right? They can make it succeed. They can make it not succeed because they have a high interest in it, but they don't have, a high influence rather, but they have a low interest in it succeeding or not. And then there's the third one, the low influence, the low interest, and then the last one, the low influence, the high interest. Different engagement mechanisms for different stakeholder groupings. So for the first stakeholder grouping, the high influence and the high interest, these are what? Your champions or your sponsors. For example, the person who is providing the money, who is making all the approvals for all of your projects. Think of the CEOs. Think of the chief medical directors. This kind of people, you have to actively engage them. Everything you do, they need to be in the know. You have to your communication with this group has to be persuasive in nature, encouraging in nature, so that they are able to queue behind you. Remember again, one thing that we must understand as burden change managers is change often doesn't just fail. They fail because the people who need that change, who need to go through that change with you, are not carried along. And so sponsorship support for your change is crucial, really important for you to succeed as a change manager. And this is where the high influence and the high interest comes in. Ensure that you have your sponsors behind you, everything you do. Ensure that the CEO, the CFO, whoever it is, who is provided the box for all of those things, is really carried along. And then you move on to the next group of people, which are the high influence and the low interest, right? The high influence. These are another group of people that you must really pay attention to. And in your communication with them, you have to keep them satisfied to prevent them from blocking your efforts. The same thing goes for the low influence and the low interest, but on a different note. Low influence, low interest. I'm thinking about the HR department here. The HR department is not really interested in the kind of digital charting system that I want to introduce for patient management. So these guys have low influence on the project, and they also have low interest on the project. Remember, the stakeholder is anybody who is interested in seeing the project succeed or fail. Anybody who has an interest in the success or the failure of the project is a stakeholder. But this group of people, they don't have any interest in the project succeeding, or they have very low interest in the success of the project. They also have very low influence on the success of the project. So this group, what do you do? What do you do to them? You monitor. Just monitor lightly, because again, a low influence and low interest stakeholder today might become a high influence and high interest stakeholder tomorrow. Think of if the HR, if the head of the HR suddenly is promoted and then becomes the CEO of the organization. He immediately, by the virtue of the fact that he's not the CEO, becomes a high influence and high interest stakeholder. So because they are low influence and low interest stakeholders today, does not mean you just relegate them. You monitor this group, because anything can happen. Changes can happen. And that's why you're a change manager, right? You look at your stakeholder groupings on a daily basis, on a regular basis. If there's a change in any stakeholder, you quickly activate the plan. If the stakeholder moves from high influence, high interest, and then he retires, he leaves the organization, and then you're still communicating with him about the change, you're just wasting your effort, because you did not know that he has been changed or he has been replaced. So you monitor. It's really important for you to monitor. So I think I can move on now to the example, which I briefly also talked about. The chief medical officer is a high influence and low interest. You have to keep this person satisfied. You have to highlight alignment to strategic goals. Oh, the goal of this organization is that in the next 3 years, we want to be the #1 hospital in this province. That is the high-level strategy. And so you want to tell this chief medical officer how this change will contribute or will help the organization achieve that long-term vision. The everyday nurse may not be interested in the 5-year plan. In fact, the nurse herself maybe has a plan to leave the organization in 2 years and move on to something else. But the chief medical officer or the CEO is not thinking about that. He's thinking of 5 years' time. Where am I going to be? So this change, does it support my vision to bring this organization to this level in the next 5 years? So depending on all of this, you begin to stratify your communication and your engagement methods to all the different stakeholders that we have. If you have any questions, again, please put them in the chat. We can come back to those at the question and answer session. So again, a lot of information to take in. You cannot take them all in one session. But if you are going to have anything at the back of your mind, it is this. You have to start simple. And you have to engage others early. But the one I would really love to stress is updating regularly. One thing we always do, or a lot of change managers do, is you come up with those stakeholder engagement metrics, you come up with those change impact assessment, and then we do those and we lift them. And that brings about gaps in our work, because like the example I gave earlier, a low interest and low influence stakeholder may suddenly become a high interest and high influence stakeholder tomorrow. If you do not update your artifacts, we call them change management artifacts, all of those things, impact assessment, stakeholder matrices, if you do not update those regularly, you tend to lose sight of the things that matter. And then you drop it and feel you've done. It's not a checkbox exercise. They are living documents that need to be updated regularly, visited regularly, and engaged as we go on. So start simple. You can use Excel or Google Sheets. Engage others early. Don't build these tools in isolation. You cannot cut my head in my absence, right? So don't build these tools. You cannot determine who the stakeholder is without you speaking with them. So you need to engage with these people, engage with them, engage early, and update regularly. And so that is where I will be dropping the ball on. And so my colleague again, and Marcia, will take over from here.
Yeah, thanks, Ion. Thank you for talking about change, impact assessment, and stakeholder analysis. So as Ion highlighted, I see you raise your hand. Ogi, do you want to come on quickly before we?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I just needed to chime in about what Ayo just concluded with. You don't work in isolation. I think, and I see this with BAs and PMs. You know, you sit in because you are new in this role. You just transition into this role. You sit in your corner. You're trying to figure everything out by yourself, and then you become anxious, paranoid, and then you feel you can't do this. Because I think it's because most of us are coming from a role where we work on our own, we don't interact or collaborate with people, and then you still carry that mindset into this new role. So it's something you really need to intentionally work on that. Hey, you are driving this and you need to collaborate with people. You need insight and information from people to get you moving. So it's very, very important. Please really pay attention to what Ayos said about, you know, working with people. Don't sit by yourself. Don't figure it out on your own. You can't figure it out on your own. Forget it. It doesn't work. All right. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thanks, Ogi. So, and it's a good segue in terms of what we're going to talk about in terms of building your own toolkit, right? Now, I just talk about the change impact assessment and the stakeholder analysis, which are two important action tools that responsibilities, I'm going to group them in different words, that a change practitioner needs to understand and need to know how to do it. And as Bogi just come on, you're doing things, do not do it in isolation, right? So you have to be collaborative. Now, as somebody that is new, like you're looking to transition to change management, you really need to reflect on the current role that you're in, and does it offer you that opportunity to collaborate a lot? And Ogi mentioned a while ago that some of us sit in roles that we're working individually, but going into a change management role is going to require you to collaborate a lot with teams, groups, the entire organization, leadership at different level. So you have to think about developing your skills in those areas. Now let's talk about what you can do over. I know we're like very close to time and I want to get to the Q&A. What you can do to get you there. So over the next 2 weeks, not 2 weeks, the next couple of weeks, 12 weeks, and if you're really serious about moving into change management, these are some of the things that we are recommending that you do. I am a strong believer that putting in the effort will get you results, right? So for everyone, the time frame might look different. This is just a guide in terms of what you need to do. So for the first 1 to 2 weeks, you want to learn about the organization, right? Learn about what change management framework they use before. Try to have coffee chat with different individuals within the organization, right? So you really want to learn about the organization itself. Don't go in and say, okay, I'm just gonna only focus on the project. You want to really get into those weeds and try to see what they organize, immerse yourself in the organization culture. Um, week 3 to 6, build relationship, assess your stakeholders, right? Know who is who in the camp. It is important as a change manager. Who are the decision makers? Who are the influencers? I just talk about understanding high interest, high influence, right? High interest, low influence, low interest, low influence. So try to understand that tool because outside of doing a change project, it's also really helpful in your everyday life, right? just in your everyday role. It doesn't matter if you're an agility lead, if you're a resource planner. Understanding how stakeholder analysis work will truly help you through any career. Week 7 to 10, right? I'm thinking you understand the project. You want to develop a strategy, how you're going to move forward, right? I have here change strategy, but develop a strategy for yourself in terms of how you're going to move forward. Week 11 to 12, launch and initial intervention, gathering feedback. So you're into the weeds of the project or the initiative that you're employed in, right? So this is what you want to do. This is a guide in terms of a new practitioner, right? I love to highlight these skill sets, right? No, I'm calling it out here. As you can see, earlier we talked about continuous learning. I'll just draw your attention to that. It's important to have that continuous learning mindset. Now, how is it that you're going to continue to learn about change management overall? You join a change management community. You have ACMP that is out there. We have our own community here on Pollard that you can join and become involved, pursue certification. ProSci is very popular and we do offer it here at the Pollard Consulting, right? So you can also do your ProSci here. CCMP is something that you're going to aspire to because it's for more seasoned practitioners. And read why. Read about industry. Read about how change management is changing and what's happening in different industry. And then I'll bring you back now to those technical skills and the soft skills. So the technical skills I want to highlight. Project management is key. Most times when you're employed, you will be employed to work on a project. Data-driven mindset. So you want to be analytical. You want to develop those data analysis skills. Strategic is important. You will be working with leadership and people leaders to build strategy in terms of how you're going to execute and move forward, what to do. Facilitating. You will be facilitating a lot of sessions. I just talk about change impact assessment. It means that you're going to facilitate workshops to understand those impacts, right, within projects. Planning that comes hand in hand with project management. Process mapping. If you're on a project, you're going to work closely with your business analyst. You're going to work closely with your process analyst to understand processes and like the current state processes and the future state process and how it affects people and what's changing. So having those technical skills is a good place to I look at these skills and say, okay, if I do not understand it now, let's try to develop these skills. Soft skills, of course, influence without authority. So as a change manager, you might not have the authority, right? But you really want to have that influencing skill because you're going to make recommendations, right? Based on things that are coming through your stakeholder analysis, your change impact assessments results. So you want to be saying, based on the data, right? These are some of the things I recommend based on my experience. This is some of the things you need to pay attention to. So, think about those soft skills, active listening, because you might be working with a stakeholder group and what they're saying is different from what they're doing, right? Or sometimes things are not matching up. So you need to be able to connect the dots and not just talking, just there listening and observing what's going on. Emotional intelligence, empathetic. We talk about that in our first part, saying empathy first mindset, right? So we're dealing with people. People are going through different things throughout the day, throughout their life, at work. So we can't just be thinking about work processes. There are other things that are impacting, how people change. Being receptive, storytelling. That is one thing I personally working on to tell more stories, right? like how to tell more stories. I think even with this AI world, I think this is a skill set that you really need to work on developing, right? Because you as a change practitioner, you're helping leaders to tell a story about the change, right? So this is a skill set I would recommend you work on. Trust and self-awareness. Just being honest, open and honest in terms of what you find, what you recommend, and why you recommend it, right? Because you really want people to respect you within the organization. I know we're at time. We do have just a few more slides, but I really want to jump to the Q&A, right? So these slides is around common mistakes. So when you get the slides, you know, you will be able to read them, but I want to be able to respond to some of your questions. So let's just jump to the Q&A and check if there are any questions that we need to respond to. Right? And you feel free to come off mute if you want to ask any questions. Um, Sherry, you want to go ahead and talk about?
Hi. Yeah, sorry, that I get a little noise in the background. So I want to ask, right, transitioning from a skill like business analysis, what is the best way to apply for change roles? Like, is it wise to go straight to change management roles, or are there other options someone can apply to since this is a new field? I
Mhm.
don't know if my question is clear. Because I know
So
change
what
management roles require so many years of experience. So how do you advise someone that is just transitioning that already has some change experience and wants to go into change management proper? So what kind of roles do you advise we apply to since we are just new?
okay. All right, so I'm gonna let Ayo chime in, right? So you're new. What role are you transitioning from? Just to be clear, what role
So
are you
um,
you're in in
I'm a
today?
business analyst, but I got a job as a change coordinator in a firm, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
permanent yet. So I'm trying to apply to roles to get me into change
Mm-hmm.
management proper. So I'm kind of having some issues knowing what to apply for exactly since I don't have years of experience in change management.
Okay, so Sherry, you said you were a business analyst and you're currently in a change coordinator role. That's what you
Yes,
said, right?
yes.
I must tell you that I myself transitioned from being a BA, right? So transitioning from being a BA into change management, I personally, I will let I chime in. Um, I think that's an easy transition. Let me tell you why. As a BA, right, I needed to do what you call current state analysis and future states, right? So we have to work closely with uh, different stakeholders to understand that, which is just as what I had just described about the change impact assessment is basically the same responsibility. The major difference between a business analyst and a change manager from my experience is that the change manager tend to the business analyst persons tend to be a little bit more technical. Not all BAs are technical, but they really want to understand how processes are changing, right? How systems are changing. What is that business requirement, the business case? They do a lot of conversation with stakeholders. The skill sets for a business analyst is very transitional. What I think you need to is a coach in terms of understanding the current responsibilities of a BA and to be able to explain it how you're going to use those current skill sets as a change manager, right? So I've done that before. I was able to identify the difference between both roles. I would recommend you look at each responsibility within a job description and match it back to your BA. Also, being a change coordinator, I know it's more on the planning side, organizing the change managers, depending on the organization that you're working with. Your position, right, to see and observe what change managers are doing on projects. And that will help you to understand, okay, I've done something similar like that as a BA. right? I know each organization is different, but that's what I would say. For you, I think is that just a little bit of coaching that you need and to be able to just look at those responsibilities and match them. Ayo, do you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Marsha. I think you're in a better position to answer or to respond to Cherry's question, which you have done, considering the fact that you moved from business analysis to change management. So you've already experienced that journey. I just want to add again that, like I said at the beginning when I was talking, uh, change management is that kind of field that your past experience always counts. Now, there is a lot of cross skill between business analysis and change management, which Marsha has already talked about. Business analysts always, all the time, they work with stakeholders. They work with business unit heads to elicit requirements. You do what it's called requirements gathering. You talk with stakeholders. You have so the stakeholder part of change management. I want to believe that if you are a business analyst, you already have a very good hand, at least if not practically, theoretically, on that. So you don't have a lot of issues or challenges with working with stakeholders. You already have that experience. And then the second part of which is the analysis part of it, and that is related. When I raised up my hand earlier, I was actually raising up my hand to respond to Rodi's question in the chat, which is really important to the analysis part of it. So as a business analyst, you already have a lot of things going for you. Stakeholder impact assess change. The only thing is change impact assessment, but you already did that. You've already been doing that in different areas before. So you can actually you've moved from a BA role to a change coordinator role. You can move on to a change lead or a change specialist role. I would only add to what Marsha said by saying you might just need a little bit more coaching, more support, which you can always get through Pollard's Consult. You can get through joining communities of change managers to just get that extra edge that you need. But coming from business analysis already places you in a very good place to deal with change management. You already have that background, and so that shouldn't deter you from applying to change manager roles or change lead roles or change specialist roles, right? So I would then want to, I hope that really answers your question and put some of your
Oh,
anxiety to bed.
yeah, thank you so much. It does. Thank you.
Yeah, so then I would want to talk about Rudy's question, which is really important. Again, due to the time, due to the fact that we are pressed for time, one of the questions she asked is, how do you measure rejection? And I would really like to emphasize that, because change management is always seen as a soft skill. You talk to people, you take it down, you keep talking, but it goes a lot beyond that. There is a data part of it, which a lot of us are not very familiar with, or the analyzing the data, rolling out surveys. You must engage with people. You must do surveys that measure change. There's what you might refer to as a change perception survey. Even before you get to go live, you're doing all of that to understand how people feel about the change that you have been working on, or that you've been introducing to that organization. So the change perception survey is a quick tool that helps you to see, my change, this change is not seen as our change. It is seen as the change manager's change. It is not our change. It is a change manager's change. We're not going to do it. You get that information early on in your project. You want them to have a feel that this is our change. So if your change perception survey is coming out like it is this change, it is their change, then you're already positioned for failure. So you do all of those things at different times in the project, and that helps you to measure adoption, to see whether the gut feel about the project is good amongst your stakeholders, and so that helps you eventually deliver a successful change. There are so many other things that we can talk about, but I will just want to just leave it at that for now.
Yeah. Thanks, Ayo. The rejection, and just to add to what, um, you should know that you're going to be rejected long before you get rejected, right? If you're doing your work properly as a team, you should see all the signs of rejection and pivot in your plans long before. So as I mentioned, the adoption survey, this is something that, you know, we might call it different things throughout the project, but we're checking the health of what we're doing throughout the life cycle of the initiative. Um, any more questions, Maka? So we can, any more questions?
No, it's just that the Rudy's said about being a resource scheduler, that Ayo was supposed to just give a hint on that, how she can use it to merge into transitioning into change management. Maybe just throw in a little more light on that one, Ayo.
Okay, yeah, that I thank you for bringing that up. It's a weekend and our brains are in weekend mode, in it. So, we might miss certain things. Thank you, anyways. So, resource schedule. I like the file. I like what I see here. You create work plans. I can see plans. You complete construction type projects, right, to fulfill customer commitments. So already it's clear from these two sentence or two. Is it from the anyway? It's clear from these two liners. Is it two sentences or one? Whatever it is, it's clear from what I see here that you already have some foundational skills that you can leverage to pivot into change management. The fact that you've been creating work plans, we create change management plans as well. Your subjects might be different, but you're still creating a plan, right? So you're creating a work plan for, and you're also doing resource scheduling, or technicians need to do this. We have 10 technicians available for this job. There are 20 job orders to fill. I've got just 10 technicians. How can I divide the workload amongst them? So this already tells me you're doing a lot of collaboration, a lot of working with stakeholders, and a lot of planning. And these skills are really important in coming up with your change management plan. All right, how many change managers can we assign to do we have in this organization? Is this a large scale transformation, or it's not a large scale? Okay, that means we should be able to have 4 or 5 change managers handle this kind of change. So you can also come up with that, the change management plan. These are the stakeholders. There are 10 HR heads, or there are 10 stakeholders in the HR department. I need to communicate with them. So the fact that you're engaging with people already, you're working with stakeholders, also already gives you one foot ahead in the job market, and you're seeking to transition to change management. You only need again to add some more training, maybe some more collaborations with other people, which we are doing today and which can continue even beyond today to get some other further trainings. But already, wherever you're coming from, even if you're a caterer, if you're a chef, if you're wherever it is you are, as long as you are creating plans every day about what to do, how to do it, how to move from A to B, you already have that foundational skill set to be an effective change manager. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, don't be deceived by the fact that I wrote there that we are not all change managers, and that is also true. We are not all change managers in one sense, but in another sense, we are actually all change managers.
Okay, thanks. All right, so thanks for your questions. We know, and let me wrap up in the next 2 minutes. So we just have 3 more slides. There are a few things that I want to highlight. So at Polar Learning, we do offer the change management training, right? So this practicum is a 6-week, 6-week training program, and it really depends on the speed of the individuals that are there. So Sherry, this is something that maybe is good for you to look into, right? And what we do is to really introduce you to some of those tools that Ayo highlighted earlier in terms of all those tools that we use as change practitioners. We try to work through real life cases, so real projects that you can use and use those examples, develop your professional portfolio. You have access to the tools and lifelong learning resources, right? So our next class will start around about September 13th. That can change. It really depends on registration, but it is a rich course, right? And we use that program to set you up for success, right? You're not going to learn everything in 6 weeks. 6 weeks really is to give you the correct foundation, right? Help you with that transition. Also, at Polar Learning, and I'm going to ask Ogi to come off mute a little bit to talk about it. We do have you can do your ProSci certified certificate here as well. Hmm?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Mash. So, yeah, we do collaborate with a ProSci authorized trainer to provide you with ProSci change management certification. So if anyone is interested in getting this certification, you can just shoot us an email and we'll send you all the details. Because it's a partnership with a training organization, we don't have the information on our website, but every information about the career development program, you can find it on our website, and I'll share here shortly.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ogi. I am going, Sherry, I see your hand is up before I wrap up with this last slide.
Oh, sorry. It's previously.
Okay. Yes, Rudy, we will share the slides after along with the tools. Like you will get a change impact assessment tool and stakeholder analysis tool that you can use as a practice. So
if she'll hold on, let
as
me quickly
someone,
share the YouTube channel. She would get lots of, the last webinar was there, and there are other webinars Masha has done in the past that people have found very, very valuable. I'll just share that, or you can go look for Pollard Learning on YouTube.
awesome. So what's important, right? So here are some resources that we're recommending, right? So as I highlight, continuous learning is key, right? Reading a lot about change management, reading widely, reading about some of the changes that are happening within the industry. So here are some books that I think as a new practitioner, we all should read. It talks about leading change. Switch is a very good one. Managing transition. So go out. You can get it at your local library. You can buy it. My practice is to get it at the library first, and if it's really good, then I buy it. Right. Um, and online resources. You can go to ProSci Learning Center. You can go to Change Management Institute. You know what? I've left off the ACMP Global, and I'm an advocate for ACMP Global. There are a lot of resources there. It's not on the slide. I'm going to ensure that I edit the slide before it is shared, right? But I'm a big supporter of ACMP and a member also. So ProSci, you'll get all those ADKAR module resources. If you're into ProSci, remember, I recommend do not just know about ProSci. Learn other frameworks. We've highlighted Kotter, we've highlighted ADKAR, we've highlighted Bridge. Please learn others, right? Or learn about Kotter. And each of them, they serve different purposes, right? In organization, they tend to combine them or use pieces of each. And build your network. You can start building your network by connecting with myself and Ayo. This is that we're on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn. Sherry, reach out to us if you have any questions. If you're really looking to, to transition, because really, I think you just need some coaching. Because as I said, a BA is very you're